Good evening, everyone. This is Jim McCauley.
Hey, Jim, it's Jared. How you doing?
Great. Thanks for hosting.
All right, I just started the recording. Before we begin the meeting and do the call to order, there are two people that I wanted to remember. First is Rosaria Charamitaro Giacalone. It's not a familiar name to new reporters, but that's our health director's mother. She was a native of Sicily. She was in a nursing home in Medford and died of COVID-19 in the last 2 weeks. So we want to remember her and give our condolences to Frank. Also, their former NRA member and longtime chair, Ed Dodge, passed away April 13th. There was an obituary in the Daily News. Mr. Dodge was not on the original NRA, but he was there really during the key years, so 1968 to 1979, when things really got busy. And his wife, Sandy, who survived him, she worked in our tax assessor's office in the 80s and 90s. So in memory of these two people, I'd like to just have a moment of silence. Thank you. Clerk Jones, how about a call to order?
We'll be happy to. Councilor Devlin.
Here.
Councilor Khan.
Present.
Councilor Lane.
Here.
Councilor McCauley.
Here.
Councilor Connell.
Present.
Councilor Shan.
Present.
Councilor Tantar.
Here.
Councilor Vogel.
Present.
Councilor Wallace.
Present.
Councilor Zede.
Here.
Councilor Eigenman.
Here.
We are
Late file items.
There are two, Mr. President. The first one is a Ordinance 57, which is a moratorium on dog license fees. And the second is a Communication 140, which is the statement of interest submission information. That's with respect to the high school project. Both of those have been submitted at the request of Councilor Khan.
Motion
Motion
waive the
to-
rules and accept the late file. Sorry.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? I'm not hearing any opposition, so those are both in our agenda. And Clerk Jones, if you could put them in the appropriate place. So I guess Ordinance 57 goes under item 13, and then the communication after that.
Communication
Another
would
line item for it.
would
Yeah.
go right after Mayor's update, I believe.
No, that's soon, before the consent. Oh, I see what you're saying. So in between 10 and 11. Okay, done.
Correct. Yeah.
All right.
Mr. President,
Public comment. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm told the mayor is going to comment tonight.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. No. She's on, and I'll call on her in a second. I just wanted to see if there was any public comment first.
Very good.
The way we'll do public comment is I'm looking at the attendee list. There are 19 attendees. If you could electronically raise your hand, and then I'll give a list of everyone who has raised his hand, and keep your hand raised. This is just like elementary school. And okay, I see two. So first, the two are Erin Hobbs and Angela Bick. So let's start with Erin Hobbs. Please give your full name and permanent home address, and off you go.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Erin Hobbs, and I'm actually a science teacher at the high school. And I am also a member of the high school STEM team that collaboratively worked to reimagine teaching and learning as part of the district's strategic plan in 2016. So Angela Bick is going to refer to our summary and rationale for the statement of interest to submit to the MSBA. So I would just like to speak to that. And so as you start to look at the proposal, I know that it's really easy to do a cost benefit analysis to the roof that we're proposing for the high school. As you all know, it's easy to look at the cost of a repairs are going to far exceed the cost to replace the roof itself over time. It's a little bit more difficult as we start to look at the cost benefit analysis of the human capital we are asking the city to invest in with a STEM building expansion. But the reality is you might not see a return on investment for some time. But what I can tell you is that the proposal is grounded in STEM education research, and the research indicates that your investment will be worth it in the long run. The STEM jobs are the fastest growing sector in the US economy, and the building improvement proposal supports curriculum that will build capital in our students. And I just want to lead that this building expansion for the STEM component, it's going to increase innovation and exposure to technology by increasing the amount of time students are spending in science labs and with more hands-on learning. Currently, students are limited to access labs maybe once every 1 to 2 weeks, and research suggests that this really does need to be increased. We also really want to build our students' 21st century skills by creating flexible innovation spaces, as you will see in our proposal. But it's to really foster creativity and innovation through real world problem solving. We really want to build technology literacy and expose all of our students to the engineering design process with our technology innovation spaces. And really, this goes beyond computers using platforms. We really want to get our kids using 3D printing, industrial design, prototype design, but we are limited right now by our space. I can keep going, but in the sake of time.
Ms. Hobbs?
Yeah, I'm not just.
Yeah, why don't I? We give 2 minutes to each person. Don't worry that when we get to the item, the chair always has the ability to call on staff. So you'll get another chance. I'd like to go on to Superintendent Bick, if that's okay.
Okay, sure.
Superintendent Bick.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak briefly tonight. I'm asking that you consider supporting the school committee's yes vote to submit the statement of interest to the Massachusetts School Building Authority for the Newburyport High School project that Erin so eloquently just spoke about. We've provided you with a document tonight to aid you in your deliberation. And in that document, you'll see that it includes an overview of the educational vision for STEM at the high school, a history of the district's STEM-wide initiative and our collaboration with community partners through the Newburyport Education Foundation. Provide you with a glance of some of the instructional possibilities that the project would support for the high school and key elements of the SOI process and timeline. I did want to tell you that as the district's curriculum and instruction leader, I am in support of this proposal because it provides us with the educational spaces needed to create innovation learning pathways. I believe that it's our responsibility to provide our students with opportunities to learn transferable skills that will become the foundation for their future success. Flexible learning spaces that are student-centered are at the core of that vision. So this project is not just about renovating rooms. It's about fundamentally changing learning environments to meet the needs of 21st century learners. At this point, by submitting the statement of interest, it's relatively risk-free. But by not submitting, we're at risk of missing a great educational opportunity. I also wanted to let you know that in the virtual house tonight and available for your questions, our Superintendent, Sean Gallagher, Vice Chair of the School Committee, Bruce Menon, Director of Facilities, Steve Burkholm, High School Principal, Andy Wolf, High School Associate Principal, Mike Testa, High School Technology Engineering Teacher, Sarah Ledbeater, as well as Erin Hobbs, who just spoke briefly. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. So again, all those people I see on the attendees list, and when we reach the item, I'll be able to call on them if counselors have questions and so on. So I don't have any other public comment. All the hands are down. And with that, I'd like to recognize the mayor for mayor comments.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're on.
Thank you. Appreciate that, President Eigerman. Thank you, councilors. I appreciate an opportunity to provide a few updates. I know it has been quite a while since we've been together, and I know we're all learning in a new way to connect and do these meetings. So I was glad that scheduling allowed for me to be here tonight to present a few updates, and certainly would open it up for any questions you might have after. I think, as you know, I've been providing you with ongoing updates about what has been happening in the city regarding COVID-19. I think there is tons of information. Thank you, Matt Coogan and other staff, for posting information about how we're doing in the city. And I would encourage all to refer to the city website and those updates. Also, on Thursdays at 4, I've been doing a weekly video updating the community, as well as anything significant in a code red or reverse 911 call, as well as doing updates on local pulse. So I think that we've been doing a pretty good job in terms of communicating information regarding where the city stands on that. Moving on to one of our greatest challenges at the moment is the FY21 budget. And with all of the calls with the state, with Lieutenant Governor, with members of the Mass Municipal Association and Division of Local Services, they are directing us to create 1/12 budgets, since it is still very, very unclear, and the fiscal status of the state is pretty dire, but this is what they're recommending. We are told that by the end of the week, we will have more guidelines regarding how we're putting the 1/12 budget together. The school has put their first month. What we'd like to do is present you with July and August budgets. So we wouldn't have to come back and do another monthly budget should we not have direction from the state. And they're telling us it's going to be several months before they're going to be able to give us real solid numbers in terms of going forward. Nancy Lysick with Superintendent Gallagher has put together the first budget for July for the schools, and we will be having a discussion about that tomorrow night at school committee meeting. There'll be more information coming from the state. Hopefully by the end of the week, we have another conference call with managers and mayors and MMA, Lieutenant Governor, and hopefully ANF will be on the call, Administration and Finance, tomorrow. So we'll have more information for you on that. One of the topics that came up last week was what's happening with Chapter 90. That's about $516,000 we receive annually from the state for paving. It's an important figure, important allocation for us, but there is a question whether or not that is going to be distributed this year. And part of the reason for that is because the Chapter 90 funds, which they allocated $300 million to all the communities across the Commonwealth, was tied into a transportation bond bill that was funded through the gas tax. Now, obviously, there's been a 70% decrease in people using their vehicles, so that revenue stream has greatly diminished. And so that bond bill is at risk, because how do you put out a bond bill without revenue to support it? So that's up in the air at this point. We've had conversations with DPS with our existing revenue that we might be able to, and our priority would be to do Merrimack Street this year with the remaining funds we had left over from last year. But again, we have to look more closely at that and what the costs are at this point. The other project that is going forward, this is a federal program that is awarded to states, and then they typically award two Safe Routes to School projects, and that $2.1 million project for High Street We'll begin once the weather gets a little better, but we anticipate that starting shortly. Jordy Vining is the project manager from the city for that, and we'll be working with Heather Shan, the Ward 3 counselor, because that's most of her ward, is in Safe Routes to Schools, to set up a Zoom meeting for a public meeting. I can assure you Jordy Vining has worked very, very closely with all of the abutters and has a good communication system. And again, any of the projects that are run by the city through the planning office, there is a project website there for more details, and encourage the public to go to Safe Routes to Schools to take a look at that. In terms of the PCB cleanup, this has probably been one of the most frustrating projects for the city. We keep being sent back to do more excavation and more testing. And in the last round of testing, there came some additional PCBs that are under the fence inside the wastewater treatment facility and up against a power line for National Grid, which we obviously do not want to touch. We've been waiting for weeks for a decision from EPA and DEP with our LSP in terms of how to move forward with this. It's just been incredibly frustrating. But we are looking at 2 future revenue streams too, because we are rapidly running out of money in this project. We are looking at another round of the MVP grant, Municipal Vulnerabilities Preparedness Grant. Again, part of this, it's not just the rail trail, it's the protection of our $34 million investment in the wastewater treatment facility to raise the road and put revetment on either side to provide greater protection for the wastewater treatment facility. So we're hoping, Jordy was hoping to hear back from DEP or the LSP in terms of having a conversation with the EPA and DEP, but that did not happen today. So we will continue plugging along on this project. The other piece, in terms of Parker Street and Complete Streets, we're at 50% design. This is the area by the Rotary for what's considered 3rd phase of the rail trail, and working on a NOI for the Conservation Commission there. In terms of a couple other things I just wanted to update you on, we worked really hard on the firefighter contract. And given the length of time it took to get to consensus, we worked with them and said, given this uncertainty regarding our fiscal status, we would like to just do a 1-year contract. It's retro to last this past July, and then regroup in the fall once we have a much bigger picture of what's going on with the state and the city's finances. So that's what's before you, is a 1-year contract. The other piece about the statement of interest, I was concerned because in the past with statements of interest, if you withdrew, you went to the bottom of the pile. And I was concerned that if for some reason people dropped out of the pipeline, that this project would rise to the top and we would not be ready this coming fiscal year to be able to do a project of this magnitude. But in speaking with Matt Donovan, who is the director of the Mass School Building Authority, he said that they always reach out and do a direct courtesy call to the mayor and superintendent to discuss if our project does come to the top of the pile, and ask us if we are ready to proceed with the feasibility study. So I had a much stronger level of confidence that this makes sense for us to move this forward. And you certainly heard from Aaron Hobbs and Assistant Superintendent Angela Bick regarding the future of the high school STEM program and how important this is. So I would encourage you to pass this. There is no risk at this point, and that should we be accepted into the pipeline, there would be more dialogue between the school, the council, the school committee about how to move this project forward. And finally, the last thing I just wanted to talk about is Plum Island, and that you are aware that we did 2 dune nourishments with tremendous support from the residents, helping to purchase sand, and at great cost to the city. We were able to use some old accounts that were from past projects on Plum Island to be able to do the dune nourishment we did. We knew it wasn't going to hold, which is why we reached out to MEMA back in November. They came out for site visits, understood what we were saying, and then before we could move forward on any, anything happening in terms of the state stepping up, because this is state property, it belongs to DCR. The pandemic hit and resources and attention is all being focused here. But, winds and rains like last night, we had spillover again. And we just keep pushing and asking. I sent a fairly stern email to Secretary Thea Hades, who is in charge of economic development, environmental affairs, to Commissioner Suberg, who oversees DEP, and also to Samantha Phillips, who's the executive director of MEMA. And they replied back that they hear me loud and clear and will be back in touch. That was about a month ago. And I still haven't heard anything back about how we are to move forward to do anything on that section of Reservation Terrace. But we will just continue to keep advocating for, we need an engineered design out there now, but considering the amount of erosion that's happened.
Thank you. If people could raise hands to ask the mayor a question, I have one so far. Councilor Connell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mayor, my question is about Plum Island and the amount of money that we have spent. I think it was necessary. I was out there. I know that Councilor Zeid had been out there as well, and I know that DPS was quick to respond when the first breakthrough occurred several weeks back. But do we have a dollar figure on how much we have spent maintaining the state land there? That's my first question. And the second question is, have you inquired about a reimbursement for the expenses that we've incurred maintaining what is theirs to maintain?
No, we have not inquired about reimbursement because, again, maybe I'll have to get you the exact figure, but I believe we're somewhere around 100,000 over the last two dune nourishments, mainly if you add the amount of staff time and the equipment we had to rent because you needed special
right. I saw them out there.
Yeah, tractors out there to be able to go on sand. And now it's even difficult to do anything from the beach side because of the level of erosion. But I will get and send that out to the council in terms of the exact figure. These were old accounts. I don't know, some of the councilors who've been around for a while remember when a resident out there on Northern Reservation Terrace wanted us to move the road after we put in the water and sewer. And we started down that path and we ended up not moving the road, and there was about 35,000 in that account, and then, so there were accounts like that. When there was an illegal account that we had some money left over, so we tapped into some of these that had a direct nexus to Plum Island in terms of using those accounts as we embarked on these nourishments. I mean, certainly, particularly during the first dune nourishment, DCR sent an engineer who was there every day working with us on the project. But the frustrating part, I think, for I'm sure Councilor Zeid, the Ward 1 councilor, and myself, is the fact that we started this process when we saw the primary dunes starting to deteriorate rapidly after the jetties were fixed and repaired, and that we were out there in the dead of winter on 2 or 3 site visits with our legislators, with DCR, with the state, and everybody agreed that there had to be a solution. And at that point, there was the possibility of putting the core bags in, but now you can't. They just won't hold. It's beyond that. So I don't know what our options are, but we don't have any other solutions at this point. And, we are talking about there are 4 sources of sand out there that, again, we've got to deal with the plovers and the restriction in doing anything between April and September 1st. but there are 4 areas of sand that could potentially be added to Reservation Terrace, because I don't think it's right to go back to the residents again. They have contributed close to $40,000 in sand. And it's sacrificial, as we know. So if we could move existing sand to over there with DCR taking the lead, it would be great. So that's why I've been working with Senator Tarr.
It allows for regular beach scraping.
Yeah. But so that's, but I will get you the exact numbers of the funds we have spent today.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Councillor Lane.
Hi, Mayor. Just a quick question. I was wondering if you'd had a chance to catch up with the marshal in terms of about crowds downtown and what they're seeing out there.
We talk all the time. I mean, no question about it. And things are improved. There's no question about it in terms of compliance. I heard a number of 500 cars were turned away from Plum Island over the weekend. So that closure has been successful and signage out there. We did put signage and some blockage along the boardwalk, and we have assistant harbor commissioners who have started a little bit early of their season to be patrolling the boardwalk. Officers are stopping any groups they see and asking them to disperse. And, you know, I think overall we're doing better. I mean, there's always room for improvement, no question about it, Councilor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mayor. I follow up on that. Residents have been asking, or constituents have been asking, when they do see gatherings, there's particularly downtown, there's gatherings of a lot of young kids, a lot of them actually on the Tracy Place. Is a suggestion to call the business line of the police department?
Sure. I mean, they are and will try and disperse groups whenever possible. No question about that. And we also have parking enforcement who's doing that. They're also out on Plum Island. So we're trying to redirect some of our resources to help with crowd control, if you will, and dispersing groups that are gathering.
So the proper suggestion to constituent is, when they see a group of gathering, is to call the business line or the dispatch.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Connell, did you want to ask another question, or are you all set?
No, I did not. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mayor. I think we're ready to move on to the consent agenda. Did anyone have any items to pull out, Clerk Jones?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, then I think you can go ahead and take us through it.
Okay, so the consent agenda this evening consists of the following: the approval of the minutes for April 8th and April 13th. There are 3 communications. First communication is 239. It's a Whittier Tech approved budget. That's to go to Budget and Finance. There's an application 13, Chocolate Tour, Central Congregational Church, May 16th. That's to go to Public Safety. There's an appointment 166. It relates to that. It's the resume of Robert Cook, who is to be appointed to the Water Sewer Commission. That is to go to Public Utilities. There are 2 transfers. Transfer 74, free cash, $125,000, to the dump truck lease, again, Budget and Finance, and transfer 75, budget contingency, $104,000 to fire salaries, deputy chief salary, and clothing. That's to go to Budget and Finance. There's the following first reading of appointments. Appointment 167, Madeline Nash, 19 Arlington Street, to the Affordable Housing Trust until 5/1/2023. Appointment 168, Barry McBride, 5 Pine Street, Salisbury, Assistant Wiring Inspector until 5/15/2021. Appointment 169, Cynthia Muir, 10 Hancock Street, to the Council on Aging until 5/31/2025. Appointment 170, Robert Dow, 185 Story Avenue to the Harbor Commission until 5/1/2023. And likewise, appointment 171, James Knapp, 24 Cutting Drive to the Harbor Commission until 5/1/2023. Following appointments to be referred to license and permits, appointment 172, Craig Holt, 33 Carter Street to the Licensing Board until 6/1/2026. Following appointment is Stephen Delisle, that's to be referred to the Planning and Development Committee. He lives at 195 High Street. He's to go on to the Zoning Board of Appeals until 5/31/2021. Following items are removed from their respective committees with the approval of the motion to approve the consent agenda. Transfer 72, this is out of Budget and Finance. Transfer 72, Order 172, and Transfer 73. Out of Education Committee, Order 175. Out of Newburyport Neighborhoods and City Services, Communication 194 and Ordinance 50. And that, Mr. President, is the consent agenda this evening.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No one's opposed, so it's adopted. Mayor's update.
Motion to receive and file, so to say. I don't know if there's a
Second.
written version.
No, there's no written version. I think we can dispense with that.
Second.
Item 10.5 is communication from Assistant Superintendent Bick.
It's Communication 140, Mr. President, which is entitled Educational Background and Rationale for the Proposal of a Building Project at Newburyport High School. It's a 3-page document that includes Statement of Interest Overview, BA Core Program, Approximate Timeline, Current Course Offerings, and Possible Course Offerings.
Motion to refer to Education Committee.
Second.
Any discussion on that before why don't I let the moving party speak first, and then I'll go to Councillor Zeid. Unless you have a point of order, Councillor.
No, I wanted to speak to the motion. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Khan.
Yes, thank you, Council President. Given that this information and came in as a late file, I do think there's a lot of aspects within this that would be beneficial for us to talk about in the Education Committee in spite of the vote today. I do think there is some good follow-up, and I think it would behoove us to maybe just have a little bit more of a deeper dive and maybe just have an opportunity to answer or discuss in more detail.
Thank you. Councillor Zeid.
Yeah, I was just going to actually, I somewhat disagree. Since we are taking the vote tonight, I just sort of figured that, we could either receive and file or postpone this until we have our education, and then it all goes together. But it's not something I feel super strongly about or anything like that. So just my comment.
Councillor Khan.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I definitely can hear that perspective, but knowing that we're also going into the budget discussions, I am, this is something that I've been talking about before, where it's nice to understand kind of a vision of where we're going as we're looking at the different budget aspects. And so to me, it'd be kind of beneficial to see this as we are also looking at the budget and staffing and things like that. Thank you.
Councillor McCauley.
Thank you, Council President. I would support moving this to the Education Committee for a couple of reasons here. We have a 5-year plan, but COVID happened, and that 5-year plan is possibly not complete anymore. We attended an interesting budget meeting the other day from the school committee, and the funds were all there to promote the current methods of education. But there's a change. There's a potential change here in September of how we teach, what we teach, the framework of teaching, the technology, the remote platforms, the training that has to happen for the teachers. I think all of those things go hand in glove, and therefore I'd welcome a committee type of discussion led by the Education Committee. So I will vote yes.
Thank you. Other councilors wish to debate the item? Seeing none, all those in favor of referring this to the Committee on Education, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? I hear none, so it's 11-0 on that one. Let's move on to second reading of appointments, please.
So there are two readings, Mr. President. There's a reading for appointment 162, which is Lauren Healy, 6 Plum Island Turnpike, to the Open Space Committee until 4/1/2023. And there's appointment 164, which is Matt Ellsworth, 38 Plummer Avenue, to the Parks Commission, parentheses Atkinson, until 5/1/2025.
Motion to approve on second reading.
Second.
I assume that's collective.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone wish to debate the two appointments collectively? Not hearing any. Let's please call the roll.
It's a roll call for appointments 162 and 164. Councilor Devlin.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Tantar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Council President Argument.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Orders.
The first order is Order 178. It's the Acts of 1987. Let me get to it. There's, it's short, I should read it, including without limitation the ability under Section 32 of Chapter 44 of the General Laws, such that to vote by a 2/3 majority to increase the total amount appropriate for the support of the city schools or the regional district schools on recommendation of the school committee or the district school committee, as the case may be, and otherwise consistent with the general laws, jointly submitted Councilors Zede and Devlin.
Motion to refer to education.
Second.
Discussion. Usually we have the sponsor speak first, and then I'll recognize councilors Khan and Tantar.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just very briefly. I mean, this one is obviously debatable, budget and finance versus education, but I think we've actually made strides towards recognizing that not everything with a dollar sign has to do with budget and finance. Interestingly, 2 of the 3 councilors sit on both committees. Myself and Councilor Khan sit on both education and budget and finance, but since that seems to be a place where we're having discussions, I thought that would be a sensible place to send it.
Thank you. Councilor Khan.
Yes, thank you, Council President. Hey, I'm all for sending anything to education since it seems to be really hopping this time. But I guess in reading the language, I almost feel like there's a lot of nuances and aspects of this that I almost feel like would be in general government. So I was actually going to, that's where I thought it was going. So I guess I'm curious to know, why would we not think of general government? Because of really just how it starts off too and what it's discussing. So I guess that's a question for the sponsor.
Let's hear from everyone, and then we'll circle back around. So Councilor Tantar, then Councilor Vogel, and then back to Councilor Zede.
Right. I'd like to support what Councilor Khan said. First of all, this is not about financing. It's about in particular about whether or not we should pay for something, which is generally what budget and finance does. We talk about the allocation of resources once a decision has been made. I also don't think it's something that belongs in the Education Committee. The Education Committee looks at educational policy and support for it. This is really about the structure that exists for deciding how to do the budget. So it's sort of a meta discussion rather than being about whether or not to fund. It's about how we arrive at a decision. And I think it belongs in general government because that's what general government does. So I'd support a withdrawal and a referral to general government.
Councilor Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in opposition to this measure being sent and being considered by any committee. As you're aware, my position is often strongly stated that I'm in favor of having all measures sent to committee for consideration. But I got to tell you, this is an exception because we really are in an exceptional time. So first, it seems very odd to me that we should take up this order regarding this budgetary process in the middle of a moment when we don't even know what next year's budget's going to look like or what the process is going to look like, or even what numbers we're going to be working with. Secondly, in terms of how we spend our time, particularly with regard to the budget, I think we should be working diligently to find a path to maintaining the status quo to the absolutely the greatest extent possible. I don't think we need any type of distractions, and I think this is really truly unnecessary at this moment in time. Truly, there's no need to do this now. We can consider doing this later on if and when we ever get back to normal. And really, that leads me to my final point. We're not operating in any type of normal mode. We're far from it. And I don't get it. We agreed as a body not to take on and not to rule on issues of any great substance. We agreed to that. In fact, I believe the sponsors of the order were quite vocal on that point, and one suggesting that, you know, being face to face with constituents was paramount in conducting our business, particularly of things of this high regard. So, you know, this is a matter of great substance, and it's distracting. I think it's divisive. I think it's inappropriately timed. And I would like to urge you all to not vote on sending this to committee and forcing a debate while we're dealing with a matter that's truly pandemic. You know, this is just not the time and the place to be heading off onto some tangent such as this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Just one thing. I would ask all councilors to avoid characterizations like divisive. That's all I'd like to say. Councilor Connell, I can't go back to Councilor Zeid because Councilor Connell hasn't spoken yet. Could you go ahead, Councilor Connell?
Yes, I'll be brief. I think that the suggestion of Councilor Khan is sensible. This is not, again, about a specific existing budgetary matter that requires a transfer or approval of some financial matter. This is really about the way in which we plan for the distribution of funds wherever they're coming from, be they for public schools or for any other purpose in the city. And I think that the general government is the appropriate place for this discussion to occur.
Before I go to Councilor Zeid, I'm not going to enter into the debate, but I just want to read the code section so everyone has it. It's very short. So section 2-32, responsibilities of Committee on General Government. The Committee on General Government shall be concerned with supervision of city properties whose custody has not been assigned to a specific municipal department, comma, and the following city departments, colon, city clerk, city solicitor, registrars of voters, information technology, and human resources, period. Next sentence. The committee shall have charge of and supervision over the city council chambers, period. Councilor Zeid.
Yes, thank you. I admit that I did not anticipate this being as controversial as it is. I'm sorry that some councilors find it to be distracting or unnecessary or inappropriately timed. I would obviously disagree. Yes, I don't support dealing generally with things that are, material or substantial unless they have to be. And that was the agreement. And I adhere to that agreement. But at the same time, to me, this is actually very important today because we're talking about in uncertain times, basically allocating money to or not to our schools. And that may not be important to some folks, but it is important to me. And I do think that unfortunately during challenging times, sometimes you have to confront challenging issues. I would remind folks that this actually came before the council in 2015 and passed by a vote of 11-0 and was then sort of quashed by a veto that from there was not ultimately voted on to be overturned. That's something that can be discussed later. So this isn't the first time that's making an appearance. And I think that each one of us has a responsibility to advocate on behalf of our constituents. And for me, this unfortunately, and I do say unfortunately because nobody wants to be in a pandemic and it's nobody's fault, but it is timely. And if it wasn't necessary, it would not have been put in. As far as basically responding to the question of which committee, I was generally trying to adhere to the rules. You know, I understand the structure discussion and so forth. And you know, this is a tough one because generally you don't have these types of questions per se. They would be handled more in a charter discussion and so forth, but this is an aspect of state law that we could choose to accept if we wanted to, and would give a relief valve, so to say, or a way for the council to add money to our school budget, something that's important to many of us, you know, with a very high bar in my opinion, and that's something to be discussed in committee. So I'm not going to be withdrawing the motion, and I mean the second is welcome to do as he pleases, but I would like to have a vote on this and move forward.
Councillor Vogel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I do want to just repeat, this is substantive, and this is not in line with what we agreed upon. And we can take this up at any point in time down the road when we have clear air ahead of us. Thank you.
Councillor Devlin?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the at-large councilor's argument. We're just merely submitting this committee. It's up to the committee chair whether they're going to hear this during this time. And frankly, this could be getting submitted and, you know, and sit until we meet again in person, maybe in June or July. We just don't know when that is. So I never thought that we weren't going to submit anything, but it is up to the chairs of the relevant committees to whether they're going to hear this or not. That was where our discussion was on being judicious and discreet. And so I'm not going to withdraw my second. I'm okay, frankly, with it going anywhere. And then I'm going to leave it up to the discretion of the chair if they want to hear it, or and I will support them if they want to wait to hear it when we're meeting in person again.
Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Council President. Yeah, no, I had to unmute. Yeah, I'm here. No, thank you for actually reading the general government. I guess what qualifies to go in. I always tend to do this. I think I always send everything to general government and realize that it's not appropriate. So thank you very much for reading that through. So with that said, I am just wondering if I could ask the sponsors if they would consider, can we send it to both education then and budget? Since it's just really adding one more person to be able to speak. I don't know if that's an open option to the sponsors.
I don't have any objection. I mean, if that helps, it's fine by me.
None.
So
Objection, just in case anybody.
Hold on, I'll go to Councillor Tantar in a minute, but are you recasting? No, before I do, I'll go to Councillor Tantar now. Councillor Tantar.
Yeah, I just had a request of the Council President. Could you read the charge to both Budget and Finance Committee and to the what used to be called the Joint Ed Committee, please?
Yeah, you bet. All right, let me just pull it up. Stand by. Committee on Education. This is section 2-37. The Committee on Education shall be concerned with the proper use of school properties, and the activities and policies of the school committee, and act as a liaison between the school committee and the city council on issues of education and school finances. And then Budget and Finance is the next one, 37.1. Committee on Budget and Finance shall be concerned with all issues of city finances, including issues relating to city revenues and the city budget, including, without limitation, all the activities and jurisdictions of the city auditor, city treasurer, tax assessor, and tax collector. So those are the two. Okay, did the two sponsors want to adopt, recast their motion so that it's referred to both committees jointly?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Clerk Jones has that. So we know the motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion on a motion to refer to both committees jointly? I'm not seeing any. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
No.
No. So two noes. Nope, I think I heard an echo. 3 noes.
I have a no from Councilor Tantar, Councilor Vogel, and Councilor Agaman.
No.
So just two,
Councilor
no.
Connell.
Okay, 3 noes.
Connell.
Have it.
Okay, so
motion
yeah, that
passes.
would be 8-3. That passes.
Correct. It is now
All right,
in
we're
both
rolling now.
Ed and Budget and Finance.
Jointly, yep.
Dear God.
And it needs a 2/3 to do that, and it got the 2/3 because that's 8. Okay, remote participation policy. If you could fill us in on that one,
It is
Clerk Jones.
Order 179. It's a remote participation policy that has been around and in the ad hoc committee for several weeks. There's one pertinent change, which is on page 3 under the second column, which is how these meetings will be handled during this situation. And the additional language, or the new language, is no change, with the exception that the chair shall identify by name at the beginning of the public comment period. I don't think I need to read the whole thing at this point. It is owned and sponsored by Councilor Sharif Zeid.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And before we go to debate, to clarify, this is not a measure under the meaning of the charter, is our understanding, because it's not an ordinance or an order. It's merely an internal rule of this body. So we could vote on it tonight as my ruling. You can overrule me by 2/3. Councilor Zeid.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. So the ad hoc on remote meetings continues to convene once a week. Just as a quick reminder, it's myself and Councilor Eigerman and Councilor Vogel that sit. And we had a discussion following our debates, our 2 emergency meetings we had a couple weeks ago to discuss how we would handle public comment. When this was originally written, obviously, we didn't have really any experience with running remote meetings. We didn't know how it would go, so we envisioned that it would be challenging or impossible to accept live public comment. And so we came up with what has now been stricken or proposed to be stricken here, which is that public comment would be read into the record, and basically replaced it with something that's more akin to our standard meetings, wherein basically you are, of course, anybody is welcome to write to the council or individual councilors anytime, and that doesn't change. But instead of having public comment read, basically, as we had tonight, folks who wish to speak, attend or show up at the webinar, they raise their hand, and then they are then recognized to speak. And the last part of the sentence is just to avoid any confusion about who gets to speak. It's basically trying to mimic the concept of having the clipboard where it sits on the door there until the clerk picks it up, and that becomes the cutoff for whether you can speak or not. So we're basically just trying to, as always, improve here and align this better with what our normal policies and procedures are to make this as normal as possible. So ask for your support on it. And the other changes, the other strikes in the document are very minor. They're just like the version number and so forth. There's nothing else substantive. That is the only change being proposed.
Okay, there's one thing I forgot, and that is I spoke to the charter, but we still have Rule 7, which says that except really for the mayor's comment, we have to refer things to the committee. So we need to have I'd motion to table. That means just for 1 minute. The motion on the floor, if someone would please make a motion to waive Rule 7.
So moved.
Second.
Any debate on waiving Rule 7 so we can vote on it tonight? Not seeing any. All in favor of waiving that rule?
Aye.
Say
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any. So we've waived 7. Now we're back to the, we can take motion to take off the table the motion to approve Order 179.
So moved.
Second.
Is there debate on that? Okay. All those in favor of taking it off the table?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Clerk, we're back to 179. All those in favor of 179, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? I'm not hearing any. I think that was 11-0.
I think it was.
Okay, on to ordinances.
That
Ordinance
brings us-
57, I think.
It is. That's the late
Wait.
file. That's
Yeah.
temporary modification of ordinance relating to fines imposed as late fees on dog and kennel licenses. There's, it's actually modifying section 3-27 of the code. It is submitted by Councillor Khan. The pertinent part is that it moves the deadlines from June to September, from July till October, and August till November. Simple as that.
Motion to
Before I
refer to.
recognize, yep, thank you. Motion to refer, go ahead.
Yeah, motion to refer to public safety.
Second.
Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Council President. I guess I'm sorry I jumped before the motion, but one of the things I just wanted to say is that this is really not related to the fines. I mean, the fees as much as the fines. And as the clerk had read, it's really just shifting by 3 months the fines for dog licenses. And this came about because of a couple of emails from some residents. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further debate on referral? I'm not seeing any. All those in favor of referring this to public safety, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, now we're on the committee items, and I want to thank members of the school department and school committee for waiting. In case there are questions, Chair Tantar, you were first up at Budget and Finance.
So motion to approve transfer 72, which is the transfer from receipts reserved for appropriation fuel, water retained earnings, sewer retained earnings, to TAMP upgrades. It's revised for a total of $52,500.
Second.
So we had this in committee. The circumstance is that DEP about maybe 10 months ago dropped in on the DPS garage and examined the underground tank that was there that is used to collect waste oil from the DPS garage floor. The tank was found to be insufficient and not in compliance. So DPS began the process of trying to determine what needs to be done. The determination is that it needs to be replaced. We had a transfer that was first written on March 3rd that came in at $37,950. That did include $27,950 for the tank, but estimate on engineering and permitting costs were off. On March 10th, which is the day actually we received it. We received it at the March 9th meeting. All councilors received communication with an updated estimate of $52,500. So you'll note, first of all, about the sources. 60% comes from the receipts reserved for appropriation in the fuel account, basically representing DPS and other city vehicles that use the facility, and then 20% sewer and 20% water, and that reflects the relative use of the underground tank. The DPS is going to do quite a bit of work on this. They're going to build conduit, remove concrete, excavate, install a new concrete pad. That keeps some of the costs down. And the committee voted 3-0 to approve it. The work would begin at the end of this month and finish by probably at the end of May. It's necessary to do to be in compliance and to avoid fines.
Thank you, Chair Tantar. Any other councilor wish to speak on this item? Not seeing any. The motion on the floor is to approve. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item.
Yeah, motion to approve transfer 73, which is transfer from the Essex North Shore Tech School and Highway Streetlights to elections of total of $10,000.
Second.
Motion. Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead, Chair Tontar.
Sure. Basically, the city clerk has received has additional costs in part associated with elections, and necessity to have a mail-in process for absentee ballots and for processing those ballots. There's a central tabulation. They have to get 2 new machines, to put 2 teams running at City Hall to do that. There's also been an increase in the minimum wage and other costs associated with mailing for the census. So again, I just want to point out that these are additional costs that were incurred in elections, and this is not for future elections. We could also anticipate there'll be additional costs, especially if there's an entirely mail-in election this fall.
Other councilors wish to speak on this motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Other items?
Motion to approve Order 172, which is a scholarship acceptance.
Second.
Mr. President, yes, this actually is Joanne Brislin was a longtime secretary at the Brown School, and she bequested this amount to Youth Services Department to be used specifically for scholarships to the camps in the summer. Since it's a bequest, the money will be held until it can be used, and I think we should, as a city, be very grateful to Ms. Breslin for having done this. It's a very sweet, meaningful act, in my opinion.
Thank you. Any further deliberation? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Anything further?
That's it, Mr. President.
Thank you. Chair Khan, Education.
Yes, motion to approve Order 175, Newburyport High School Statement of Interest, Roof and Science Labs.
Second.
Councilor Khan, could you introduce the item for us?
Yes, thank you, Council President. So the Education Committee discussed this order in the last 2 meetings we've had since it was introduced into our committee. Before coming to the council, though, this was approved unanimously by the school committee at their March 2nd meeting. So at first, the Education Committee was notified by the mayor at the first meeting we had that this was not going to be submitted, but then we were notified around middle of April, I think April 14th, that after she talked with the Director of Administrations at the Massachusetts School Building Authority, she was assured that our application, if accepted, they would be reached out to determine if we're ready to move forward or not, so we could have more time if we needed. So then this came back on our agenda, and the Education Committee met last week to deliberate and hear from the high school principal, the superintendent, the assistant superintendent of curriculum. We also had Council President Eigerman and Councilor Tantar were also present at that Education Committee meeting. We actually voted this out of our committee 2-0 with no recommendation so that we could bring the debate here to this floor. Before I yield the floor to the sponsor, I do want to give a little bit of background. So some of you from the last term of the council may recall that this MSBA statement of interest for the high school roof and the science wing expansion was actually brought to us around this time in 2018. At the time, we were told that there was a 2017 MSBA application for just the high school roof, but that was denied. And then there was some discussion in terms of the denial being possibly due to the fact that they tend to look at roofs that have reached their end of life, which is closer to 30 years. And at the time, it was 23 years old for the the age of that roof. Today it's 25 years old. We also heard about a feasibility study that was done at the end of 2017 that actually was looking at the viability of doing a high school expansion. So many of you may remember we had a lively debate here when it came to funding that study, which was around $6,500, but that was also in March 2018. So the rework that was brought into the MSBA statement of interest was to combine the roof replacement with a science wing expansion. And the Education Committee and Budget and Finance Committee, we actually took a tour of the high school to look at the science labs as they currently were, and had a really, probably a really valuable walkthrough to get an idea of what the expectations were at that time. However, we did, at the end of March in 18, end up receiving and filing this, so we didn't go anywhere with it. The reasoning for that was mainly around trying to define the specifics of the expanded science wing and vetting that with a group of instructors, curriculum advisors, and other parties. So here we are 2 years later with still an aging roof, 25 years old, not quite 30 yet, as well as a plan vetted for the science wing. So at the Education Committee last week, we heard from high school teachers and the principal about the value of this effort. And one of the key issues, though, that did come out through our conversation was really trying to understand two things. One is the situation with the high school roof and how critical it is. And do we have time to really wait it out to see if we're going to, combine it with the expansion of this science wing. We also talked about capital projects and the severity of the financial situation that we're probably looking ahead to. Our understanding from Steve Bergholm, though, is that if the SOI is accepted, we couldn't just break off just the roof portion and forget about the science wing expansion. So they kind of come together. So one of the things we were trying to understand too, though, is if we're still going to be repairing the roof all the time, how much money are we going to be throwing in to do that? So far, $20,000 was allocated for roof repairs, of which I found out that $11,700 is still remaining. So after the education meeting, we did get supplemental information from Angela Bick, the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, who also spoke during public comment. And this information, which we've now put into Education Committee, was really helpful, though, to highlight current offerings as compared to future offerings. And in reviewing this document, the value of the science wing focuses on the intent of really aligning the curriculum growth with an expanded set of offerings that could complement that foundation in STEM that has been emphasized in the Newburyport Public Schools from the elementary school through the middle school and now hopefully onto the high school too. So for me personally, I will be supporting this. The benefits to me and the potential from the science wing alone is a substantial opportunity for education in our community. In fact, the technology teams at the high school have been using the equipment they have now to actually make face shields and ear savers that they donated to the local hospitals and healthcare workers. So many of us received many emails from residents who are very, very interested in seeing us give more money to the schools. So for me, this is a great example of how funds can be used to position our high school for the future. So thank you.
Thank you. I will not be debating on this one. Did any other counselor wish to speak? And remember, of course, we have many attendees who can answer questions. Counselor Zede.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I want to speak as well. I was the other member of the Education Committee at the meeting. And first, I just want to say thanks to the teachers in particular who came and spoke, and it kind of explained the need, and it was greatly appreciated, and to show up tonight as well as members of the school leadership team and so forth. So I am going to vote in favor of this, but I do with that need to express some concerns I have and some questions that still remain but are not going to be great enough to prevent me from voting yes. So I mean, as you know, SOIs, come before the school committee and the city council in an effort to demonstrate to the Mass School Building Authority that this has kind of been through several levels of review, and that the wheels are turning, and everybody's kind of on board. And just for members of the public who may be listening, we are talking about a $14+ million project. This is not a small project by any stretch, and typically, the school building authority seems to pay about half, is what has been the historical norm. Who knows what it might be going forward, and that means that the city would need to, the taxpayers would have to come up with the other half. So it's interesting to talk about, doing things substantive at times like this, and what is substantive and what isn't. But we are effectively setting in motion here a $7 million potential expenditure for the city, and that's just a very, very rough number. Obviously, there's considerable study that has to be done, and so I am supporting this because I'm in strong support of the schools. It's something that's very important to a lot of folks that I represent. And yes, we have heard about it recently, but I do want to clarify that there is a big difference between capital spending and operational spending. And what I heard in the emails that I got was the importance and need for more operational spending to boost the budget of the schools, to improve what's happening inside the building. We've had some big capital wins over the years with the new BRES and other improvements to the NOC, the Mullen, and indeed to the high school, even though we're here discussing that. So I will be voting in favor, but I just want to express my concerns about how we may pay for this, whether it happens in 1 year or even 3 years. I think that was a question even before the COVID-19 pandemic came up, was, where would we come up with $7 million or so, give or take, again, in order to pay for this? I think there are still questions that need to be explored, like space constraints in our schools. That came up, but we didn't have quite as much time as we may have liked to explore every possible corner of that discussion, and where we are constrained and where we may need space. It was clear that the science STEM operations at the high school are in need of space. So that's a second question. And then the third was, and this is an ongoing discussion, is, how do these things fit into a greater plan, a bigger plan? What do Newburyport Public Schools look like in 10 years? And that's the other thing that I heard in the emails, just reading them myself, was, we are seeking and striving for excellence. And I certainly think that having top grade labs would be part of that. And that's why in the end, I'm in support. I just wanted to disclaim the concerns that I have, so everybody knew where I was coming from. And I'm sure, and these debates will not go away. If we do get selected, either this year, next, or whenever, all of these questions will come back, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to answer them more thoroughly. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Tantar.
Sure, I had a few questions. One was, in reading the SOI, other than the simple assertion that it includes the labs, the actual body of it is really all about the roof. And so I'm not sure how SOIs work with the school building administration, but it seems strange to me. That's the first point. The second point, I did notice in the top of page 6, where it required answer to providing a description of the local budget approval process. There's a description there of what appears, in the charter, but at the end, the last sentence is funding a capital project would likely require an override vote, which of course, and that doesn't come from our procedures. So someone somewhere writing this made that judgment, and I'd sort of be interesting to hear about that. The third point, and this is really just a clarification, it does split into what we already referred to the Education Committee, but in what we received, the late file that we received tonight, and I just want to make sure my understanding is correct on this, the separation between the roof and the labs. We're putting them together not because we need money for the roof, and the quote is, the issues with the high school roof are currently under control, and funding still exists from an appropriation approval for maintenance and repairs of the roof a couple of years ago by the City Council. We should be able to manage through the next few years with those funds. So I'm kind of wondering, given that most of the SOI is about the roof, right? And then here we're saying that we really have enough money for the roof. Why are we including the roof in the lab project?
Whom should we direct your questions to, Counselor?
I'm not sure because I don't know who wrote this document. So if Steve has his hand up.
Steve
we'd love to hear
Bergholm.
from Steve, yeah.
Just a second. Mr. Bergholm, go ahead.
You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay. To answer the council's first question about the structure of the statement of interest, near the beginning of the statement of interest, you have to check off the areas that you have of concern that you're looking for a project. And the two areas we checked off, one was that we're looking for a roof project, and the other was basically space issues having to do obviously with the science labs. So once you check off the boxes that you're concerned with, then that sort of dictates what comes up for the additional pages that you then go through to fill out. So you don't necessarily, excuse me, you don't necessarily get a full range of a full picture of the building as a whole. You get pages to fill out on what you check on those first boxes in the beginning of the SOI. Does that make sense?
It does, and so I'd be looking at the sections on educational spaces for. I guess. Is this designed to give an argument as to why we should get support, or is this, you know what I'm saying? Because I don't necessarily see the argument for the labs here, whereas I do see an argument for the roof.
I believe the section that deals with the labs is priority 7, if I'm not mistaken.
Priority 7.
Let me see if I can pull it up here.
That is correct. It is 7.
So priority 7 has, I think, 3 questions in it that talk about the space issues that we're dealing with the science labs.
Oh, that's interesting. Because mine my copy stops at priority 5.
No, okay. Not sure what happened there.
That's sorry. Okay, so I guess I guess I just didn't get that part.
Are you all set, Councillor Tantar, on your questions? Can I move to Councillor Khan?
Yeah, so the second question, follow up just on what we received as a late file tonight that says we're all set with money for the roof. And so the question would be, why are we including the roof if we're all set with money for the roof?
No, that all right, that maybe is not clear. We're all set with funds to make repairs to the roof, emergency repairs to the roof over the next few years if we have, minor leaks here and there. Not for full replacement of the roof.
Okay, I'd suggest that you probably should rewrite that section then for clarity. I'm done.
Councillor Khan, did you want to speak or take your hand down?
No, I'm good now. I lowered my hand.
Councillor Zeid, your hand is back up. Go ahead, Councillor Zeid. You're muted though.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to respond to the at-large councillors. I went back and we talked about this very briefly last week at the committee meeting, but I do think there was a page clipped off from the from what went into this current edition, if you will. Back in 2018, there was an additional page that talked more about the labs. So I just wanted to that might be the missing link, so to say, if that is helpful in any way. So,
Mr. Burkholm, did you want to add anything?
No, I think I'm all set.
Okay, Councillor Connell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, having thumbed through this, perhaps it's somewhat incomplete. Nonetheless, I think we all know what is up for grabs here, and that is, an expansion in our STEM instructional opportunities, an expansion in the range of curriculum offerings, and in particular, an expansion or an improvement in the laboratory facilities that are available for students for instructional purposes. I fully support that. I did when we first looked at it a couple of years ago, and that was only a half-baked presentation at that time. Nonetheless, the concept was worthwhile and worth pursuing, and I'm glad to see it moving forward at this point. I know that people look at this and say, geez, we're not ready to spend that much money right now. And that may be true. That's clearly true in the short term, 6 months, a year, maybe even 2 years. But if we don't get our foot in the door, if we don't get into the queue, we are unlikely to, in the near term, let's say within the next 5 years, obtain the funding that we believe we need in order to move our curriculum and our facilities to support that curriculum in the direction that it should be going. So I fully support this. I might also just add parenthetically, some of the counselors are aware of the headaches I've had with email over the last week or so. So if there are attendees who believe they have sent messages to me in the past week or so on this matter, I didn't receive any of them. I apologize if you sent something and didn't get a reply. As soon as Comcast is able to resolve the problems I've had, I'll promptly dump them and use another email server.
Other counselors, I believe the motion is to approve. Let's go to a roll call on this one, please.
This is a motion to approve Order 175. Councillor Devlin.
Yes.
Councillor Khan.
Yes.
Councillor Lane.
Yes.
Councillor McCauley.
Yes.
Councillor Connell.
Yes.
Councillor Shan.
Yes.
Councillor Tantar.
Yes.
Councillor Vogel.
Yes.
Councillor Wallace.
Yes.
Councillor Zede.
yes.
Councillor Eigenman.
Yes.
By a vote of 11 in favor, none opposed, Order 175 is approved.
Thank you. Chair Khan, anything else?
Nothing else. Thank you, Council President.
Okay, moving to general government. There's nothing in general government. Licenses and permits.
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report. Neighborhood and city service.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move that on communication 194, we receive and file.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
Yes, very briefly, if I may. By a
Please.
vote of 3-0, the committee following discussion voted to receive and file this matter, or recommend the receive and file of this matter. It's a letter from September 30th of last year, 2019, to the mayor and council regarding the way in which we evaluate and plan for the replacement or improvement of city streets. And it makes specific reference to the complete streets principles that we have adopted. And in our discussion, we essentially came to the conclusion that those principles are not being widely used by the Department of Public Services. And I think there are two things that have come out of it. One, we appreciate the fact that this committee of actually quite highly qualified and experienced citizens, the recommendations that they've made to us, and we appreciate the letter and the guidance and the drive behind this impulse. We do think that the city has to be a little more assertive in analyzing all of the impacts of street and sidewalk repair in the context of changing patterns of use changing opportunities for transportation that exist. So with that in mind, we will be submitting, or I will be submitting a resolution to put a bit sharper point on that matter. But again, 3-0, we recommend they receive and file on this matter.
Thank you. Other counselors on the receive and file motion? Not seeing any. All up. I'm seeing one. Counselor Wallace.
Yes, I just want to follow up. I agree with Counselor Connell, and as he works through some sort of resolution, we may even consider if there's some sort of ordinance revisions that we need to make to give it a little more teeth. And I think that's the basic premise here is how do we enforce some of these things. So I look forward to working with Councilor Connell or Livable Streets as we hopefully move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Zeid.
Yeah, thank you. I just, I appreciate the committee's work. I was the sort of acting chair, if you will, late last year of Neighborhood and City Services, and this one was carried over. I guess just to put a bit of a sharper point on it, I mean, I think there was another committee item, there was another communication written by then Ward 4 Councilor Tontar, now at large. And, one of the biggest questions, was the use of asphalt on Merrimack Street. And I'm not sure we've ever really confronted that question as far as, why and how and so forth. And I think one thing that we did learn in some of the committee meetings we had last year was that, cost was a concern and that, asphalt presented an opportunity to get more done. And so my challenge is that I do hope that we can confront the question together as a whole city and just decide whatever it is we want to do. If we don't like the ordinance, we should change it. But I do, if the ordinance says it needs to be concrete, then it needs to be concrete. If we want to change that, we have an open process to do that. We figure out how to do it and we do it. And if that means that we can't get as much sidewalk done, then that's part of that discussion. I guess I just, wanted to acknowledge, frankly, the frustration I heard from a lot of folks. And, High Street's another issue all to its own with respect to the lines and so forth. But that was, that still kind of is out there. And I'm not really sure that we've come to a conclusion that makes us feel confident going forward that we know what we're going to do, why we're going to do it as a city, and that we're all on the same page. And I fully understand that, if you want, say, for example, concrete, it's a more expensive product and there are implications with that. And I just felt I had to say that. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the Livable Streets conversation here. And we had some nice discussions last year about also how to improve the process and communication. I think actually that the Safe Routes to School projects seem to have a lot of good components to it with respect to communication, presentation of plans and so forth, and maybe could serve as a guide. So I just, having participated last year, thought that somebody should mention or that I should mention it. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. Councilor Tontar.
Yeah, I'm not going to go on just support what both the Ward 4 councilors, Ward 1 councilors said. I'll be real interested to see what comes out of committee in terms of recommendations. I did spend quite a bit of time last summer, especially regarding detours around construction on High Street for pedestrians, and for bicyclists as well. It was tough using it, and I'm not sure exactly what the detours would look like, but I think in concert with DPS, I would really urge you to try to work on that so it's a little bit clearer for future projects.
That is our intention.
Thank you. Other councilors? Seeing none, let's call the question. All those in favor of receiving and filing, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? It is received and filed. Other items, Chair Connell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I move that we approve Ordinance 50 as it is amended coming out of committee.
Second.
Chair Connell.
Yeah, this ordinance came, and perhaps the president would like to speak to it as the sponsor, or Councilor Wallace may wish to do so. But it came out of a discussion generally about what makes sense about the ways in which we identify for residents the changes that occur in the streets, sidewalks, and curb cuts near or abutting their properties. I would just point out before handing this over, and I think Councilor Wallace may want to speak to this matter. Two changes we made. One was just kind of a scrivener's error on section 12-55. We added "and curb cuts." You notice that, and that's just in the title. But there's also a substantive change, and that is in section 12-55B. The draft that we first looked at eliminated the delivery by hand or mail to each resident and place of business abutting such work, so that if a notice of work is going to go out, just posting it on a couple of trees and structures in a neighborhood within 20 feet of the proposed work, we didn't think was enough. We really did think that as a courtesy to the residents that are going to be suffering through a construction project, and let's face it, some of these projects are very disruptive to the way in which we live our lives. We thought that it's a courtesy, and more than that, it helps people plan a bit around a change that's going to take place by delivering either by hand or by mail a notice about the impending work. And so with that, we made a recommendation 3-0 to pass this as amended, and which is in your hands. It was in your packet.
Thank you. I'm not going to speak on this one. I'll Councilor Zeid.
Oh, can I speak on it? Sorry, I didn't raise my hand. Councilor Wallace here.
Yeah, I'll yield, of course. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Councilor Wallace.
As a co-sponsor, yes. Yeah, I just wanted to fill in. This was sponsored by Council President Eigerman and myself. And it really kind of accomplishes two things here. One is that we wanted to catch projects that have curb cuts that aren't being reviewed. The curb cuts aren't being reviewed and approved. So this will allow DPS to do that because some of these projects are just single residences that aren't, covered under site plan review or under the subdivision regulations. This kind of gets Newburyport out of the dark ages with regards to this, because these types of permits are nothing new. Most municipalities and even the state have these types, typically called an access permit. So without something like this, what we've been seeing, especially say in denser areas such as in the South End, you'll have a house redevelopment project and they put in a 40-foot curb cut, with no review process. And that just doesn't help the residents. It takes away parking. It's just not a good situation. This also helps Tony, or Director Furnari, when he comes along and does work on, say, Merrimack Street, when they're installing new curbing, and it gives standards on how large sidewalk or driveways should be for residents or for a business. So there are numeric standards in here, and sometimes you don't see the numeric standards in a ordinance, but DPS doesn't have formalized standards necessarily. They need some cleanup work, so the numbers are in here, and this has been approved by DPS Director Furnari, and they do follow standard engineering practices typical of what the state might use. So the way that it works is it's sized for the minimum safe access, because you want to keep the curb cuts to a minimum as much as possible. But it does say it cannot exceed 24 and it cannot exceed 30 for certain commercial or industrial traffic. And those are actually very wide curb cuts. So that's kind of the first section of the changes. The second section really has to do, as Councilor Connell was saying, with notice of work for sidewalk projects or curb cuts. So you'll see language in here about brick and asphalt, and this is not about sidewalk materials, defining them. This is just changes to the notification process. The part where asphalt has been added in, that was just to clean it up so that it matches with a different section where asphalt is an option for temporary work or areas out in the industrial park. So this is not a discussion about, what types of materials, but rather, kind of cleaning up a few of the things here. So with that, I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zeid was next, and then I can snake back to Councillor Connell.
Fair enough.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess for me, there are some parts of this ordinance that I agree with and some parts that I have questions or want to challenge a little bit. Number one is certainly agree with the notification. I think that, residents and neighbors have an interest in knowing if there's going to be a curb cut, for example, because that may lead to a loss of an on-street parking space or may change and things like that. So I get that. And I think that's logical and supportable. What I don't like is I'm a little bit wary about actually having these numbers in here because often have to remind ourselves that we have a fairly diverse city physically, looking from end to end. So even in my ward, for example, if you're heading out towards the island, once you cross Marlborough, for example, the density changes, the feeling changes a little bit, and there's just a little bit more space. And so to me, there could very well be cases where somebody might want to have a curb cut that is, I consider 24 feet to be essentially a two-car width driveway. To have suitable space for the cars to pull in and their doors to open. So I could see potential for somebody on a dead-end street or on a larger lot that by happenstance to have a 3-car wide driveway, and there certainly are those that exist in and around my ward. And I think looking at the other end of the city where there's even more space, there could be instances. So I'm a little bit wary of that. Second of all. I think really to me that's why the more important thing is notification and basically a method for resolving disputes. And I think we all remember receiving a letter from a resident, in Ward 2 to the council at large, taking issue with some curb cuts. And, I think if my memory serves, there were some agreements that the curb cut was going to be something and then it was changing. So I think those are things we want to trap. I'm a little bit more nervous about being prescriptive and writing a citywide ordinance that just may not be fair in some areas. So those are my thoughts and concerns, and I think there's some good stuff here and some things that I would like to see. And then the last thing I want to ask before we go is the motion was to approve as amended. Is the version in the packet, is this what we are debating, or were there changes made to this in committee that are not reflected in what's in the packet? Maybe the chair could answer if
I believe it is what came out of committee. So
okay.
What you have in the packet is what the motion covers. I'm sorry, Councillor Connell, but under our rules, I have to go to Councillor Khan next ahead of you.
Fair enough. If I may also chime in, however, on your response to Councillor Zeid, yes, this version is the version that came out of committee.
Okay, thank you on that.
Yeah, thank you,
Councillor
Council
Khan.
President. Yes, thank you, Council President. I want to thank the councillor from Ward 4. That was a very, thank you for walking us through this. And I have to agree with the councillor from Ward 1 on the prescriptive aspect, but I believe when the Ward 4 councillor was, the co-sponsor was talking about this, that there was a mention of just applying some engineering best practices or references. And I'm wondering, would it be better to maybe just refer to something like that as opposed to providing the specific values? Is that an option that we can do or not?
Councillor, well, let me let Councillor Tantar go while the sponsor muses on that. Councillor Tantar.
So I have a question. Section 12.5 as rewritten is prescriptive. Is there an appeal? Is there a way so that if there are special circumstances, someone could get a haircut. I mean, this seems pretty definitive. So maybe if the sponsor or the committee chair could respond to that, I'd appreciate it.
Councillor Wallace.
Nope. Please hold.
Just on the, if you could just respond to the question, because Councillor Connell has been waiting. So you have two questions.
Yes, yes. Okay, so the first one, in response to Councillor Khan, yes, it would be ideal to refer to some sort of, standard drawings, standard guidelines, and that's usually how you do it. The problem is Newburyport doesn't have any of those. There are state, and I think that's something that needs to be worked on. And I think, I can speak with DPS about that, so that it's, in a perfect world, we would have a guideline book with all of these numbers and standard details. You could refer back to the state detail. I don't know offhand if it's exactly 24 feet and 30 feet, but there may be, MUTCD, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. That's another type of thing you could refer to. So I would have to find out from Director Pranari, exactly where this number came from. So if that answers your question. The other question, if you can remind me, Councillor Tontar, I actually agree that if there is some sort of waiver process or, additional review for those cases that, it may require to be larger, say out in the industrial park, if you've got really big trucks and you don't have the right sight distance or whatnot. And I found this to be an issue too with the sidewalk materials, is there in the ordinance, it didn't mention kind of an appeals or a waiver process where they could come in and talk about it. So if somebody had language that they wanted to throw in there, I would support that. Thank you.
Councillor Vogel has not spoken yet. Councillor Vogel.
I'll wave to Councillor Connell.
No, I can't. It's a rule.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So the question I have is, through this debate with all these questions, is it appropriate to send this back to committee for further review? That's all I have.
Councillor Connell, you're on.
Well, the only thing that I wanted to add to my previous comments was the fact that because we try in every instance not to step on the toes of the folks who are going to be implementing the ordinances that we pass, I did consult with the department head in this case, Mr. Fernari, and he was generally supportive of the provisions contained herein. That is one thing I wanted to add, but hearing this discussion, I think that the members are asking good questions, and maybe this requires a more wholesale review of the practices and the procedures that are in the general procedures and guidelines that are in place. We've gradually tightened up the procedures in the Department of Public Services through the years, adopting such a thing as a standardized street specification, sidewalk specification several years ago, a mechanism to get brick sidewalks, particularly in the historic sections of the city, gradually in place, if not all at once, because of the expense involved. So I guess I would advise the members that this is one bite of the apple. I think it's fair to expect the apple to come around again as we sharpen up our pencils and look at some additional changes in the months to come.
Thank you. The motion on the floor is to approve as amended in committee and in the packet. We had a first and a second on that. Is there any more discussion on that motion or further motions? Councillor Shand? No. Councillor Zeid?
I'll just give it a try. Motion. Is it in order to motion back to committee, or is that unacceptable motion, Mr. President?
You could do a motion to postpone, but I don't think you can move back to committee. Clerk Jones, I don't think we have I don't think that's how we do it.
I think you're right. The motion to approve, you could amend the motion to approve, but I think you're right. Motion to postpone would precede a motion back to committee.
Okay, then no motion at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Wallace.
So I guess it sounds to me like counselors are having an issue with just having the numbers in there. So even if it could go back to committee, I think it would still come out the same. So it sounds like either they want some sort of documentation of where these numbers came from, or the other option would be to remove the maximum language. I still like limited to minimum width for safe entering and exiting. And say maximum to be at the discretion of Department of Public Services or something like that. I guess, would that be something people would be okay with?
Councillor Khan.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Council President. Yeah, I think here's a couple of things we could do. One is we could go through it now and maybe, I can't remember exactly how you said it, so I'd have to like write it out. I'm trying to think through, but I think that would give some relief to not have a specific number. But I do wonder if, and again, my apologies for not being at the committee meeting where you talked about this. So this is sometimes, I think, the nature of some of these areas when you're kind of looking at it and get these ideas and thoughts. So I'm wondering a couple of things. One is we could go through and maybe kind of read out how it's going to be by just amending it now here on the floor. My preference would be, though, is if we could, I think, have some more stated conversation or references, but it seems like from what you said, there's nothing documented from DPS, but there is some established kind of metrics or guidelines they are using, if I understand correctly. So part of me is like trying to see if there's a way we could work within that. And I like how you said at the discretion or something to that effect, to allow for what they may have been doing. Because that's the problem we're trying to solve, from what I understand, is that DPS wanted to have something kind of specified based on what they've been already doing to kind of almost give justification for what they're doing. So I think there's a happy place to meet in the middle. I just don't know the language for it.
Before I go to Councillor Vogel, I just have to speak on the fact, just so everyone knows, the ordinance, including the widths, was sent in writing back in February to both Anthony Fernari and Jamie Tuccolo. They saw those numbers and they reacted to that. That's all I have to add. Councillor Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I mean, I had no questions at all about this until we started going on further, and which sort of raises the questions. The reference by the Ward 4 councillor with regard to some standards that are out there somewhere, but we just don't have them as part of our efforts. I'm curious as to a little bit about that. And I guess the other thing is that we can always come back to this, as if Councillor at Large Connell suggested that this is the first bite of the apple. I mean, I guess we can always come back, and if we run into issues, we can always take a look at it. I am a little bit concerned that this stuff is out there and is written, and there's really no, outlet. There's no appeal, we don't seem to be sure if there's any appeal. So that's my observations. That's my questions. And it makes me think that maybe it's time to take all these questions, take it back to committee and kind of resolve it, but I'll leave it to the body.
Councillor Zeid. Councillor Zeid.
Yep, thank you. I don't know, just maybe in an effort to try and help us from going around. So I would make a motion to strike, that we leave that all proposed curb cuts shall be limited to the minimum width for safe entering and exiting, and shall, and then strike the and shall in no case exceed 24 feet provided all the way through the end of that sentence. So I'd make that motion to start.
Second.
There's a second on the motion?
Yeah,
Councilor
second.
Khan is second on the motion. Debate on the motion to strike. Councilor Connell, were you? No, he doesn't want, nobody wants to speak. Councilor Wallace.
Oh, hold on. Yeah, I would be okay with that. I do think that we will want to specify some dimensions at some point, but I think that's going to be a larger effort of looking at all of the DPS standards. You know, in engineering, everything is specified with dimensions, you know, and sometimes it's just by best practices or based on turning radii and this and that. So I think going through this exercise here did make me realize that there's some work to be done. But if it's the way we have it now, this at least gives DPS the authority to review every single curb cut. And it doesn't lock you into any specific number, but at least it's a step in the right direction until they come up with standards on their own. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I'm just trying to be helpful. What the council wants to do what you do. But just so you know, in Boston, the maximum driveway width in a residential area is 12 feet, not 24 as proposed. And for all commercial driveways anywhere within the city of Boston, the maximum is 24 feet. Councilor Tantar.
Yeah, I'm not real comfortable with the amendment. I'm not comfortable voting on this. I mean, I would prefer that it go back to committee. I'd like to see some more information. What do neighboring communities do? My preference would be to have a specific width, but to allow waivers under certain circumstances. That would be my preference, rather than just leave it wide open. So I can't support the amendment, and I can't support this ordinance as written.
Okay, so on the motion to strike, did anyone want to speak on the motion to strike? Councilor Wallace, your hand is up.
That is not supposed to be up.
Okay, so I'm not hearing any more discussion on the motion to strike. Clerk Jones, can you remind us what's being stricken in the proposal? Clerk Jones? Clerk Jones. Maybe the sponsor can remind us.
Sure. It's from starting with the comma and shall in no case exceed 24 feet all the way through the end of that sentence ending in truck traffic. So the sentence shall read in its entirety, all proposed curb cuts shall be limited to the minimum width for safe entering and exiting, period.
Can you hear me? Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, so I'm sorry about that. So,
That's all right. That's all right. So we got it. So basically, it strikes everything. All it does is say it has to be a minimum width with no dimension given, and there's everything having to do with the maximum is stricken. Councilor Connell, did you wish to speak on the motion to strike?
I do.
Please.
A bit more globally about this item. I think taking the specificity out of this language neuters it and makes it less useful as a tool. So my inclination with the support of the sponsor, if the sponsor would so agree, would be to take this back into committee using the comments that we've heard tonight and come back to the council with a draft that reflects our best judgment given the input of the councilors we're hearing tonight.
Okay, before I go back to Councilor Zede, just procedurally, I think the choices are you can do a motion to postpone and go to our whatever you want. You can go as far as our next regular meeting. Otherwise, you have to do a motion to postpone indefinitely, which kills it for the term. You also could ask the council, the sponsor could, to withdraw the motion to approve. And we can, this is something we've often been lax about, but with the permission of the council, that can be done. and then it won't be before us. You can put it back in the committee. With that, I'll turn to Councilor Zeid.
I'll yield. Thank you.
Councilor Wallace.
So that would be me, correct? A motion to whatever you just said there.
Withdraw the motion. You can get the permission from the council to withdraw your motion to approve.
Okay. I would withdraw
And the motion to strike.
Oh. And did I even make the motion?
No.
The original one?
Mr. President?
Well, but on the floor, the clerk is pointing out we're still on a motion to strike, so we have to do something with the motion to strike.
I'll withdraw that motion.
I withdraw my second.
That's off.
Is there any objection to withdrawing the motion to strike? I'm not hearing any objection, so that's removed. Moving on, Councilor Wallace, what would you like to do?
You'll have to repeat that again.
Okay, so the motion to strike is no longer before the motion to strike is no longer before the council. Councilor Connell, you wanted to say something?
Yes, Mr. President. I think the discussion has been useful, and I would withdraw the motion to approve and bring this out at a future meeting after the committee has had an opportunity to discuss what we've heard tonight.
Okay, does anyone object to the withdrawal of the motion to approve? No, I'm not hearing it, so you're welcome to do that. However, it was on the consent agenda as being on the floor, so it's still on the floor. We need to do something with it.
Motion to refer to Neighborhood and City Services.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? It's back into committee. Anything else from Neighborhood and City Service?
No, and I thank the members for their input on this item.
Thank you. Planning and Development, anything to report?
Nothing tonight, Council President.
Thank you. Public Safety?
Nothing tonight, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. What's left?
Public Utilities.
Nothing, Mr. President. Public Utilities.
Okay, Public Utilities, rules.
Nothing to report.
Okay, I think we're on to good of the order, Mr. Clerk.
Yes, correct, Mr. President.
Councilor Khan.
Yes, thank you, Council President. I just wanted to take this time quickly to mention the Education Committee that we are going to have a meeting on Monday. That they are going to have a budget, another budget item or meeting tomorrow. And I do think that we do need to meet to talk about the different scenarios and what they present tomorrow as well. So just want to let folks know May 4th, 5:30 p.m. Education Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm seeing more hands. Councilor Zeid, good of the order.
Yeah, just very briefly on our procedures. I sent, as I have tried to do every week, a little bit of a brief summary of the conversations in the ad hoc on remote meeting. And one thing we discussed today that I want to encourage everybody to send or attend a follow-up meetings is planning for potential future where some members of our body are present and others may be remote. We kind of broached that discussion briefly today. There are lots of questions, and this is one where really having external or having as much input as possible would be helpful. We'll meet again next Monday at 2:30, or you could participate in various ways just to let us know, the three of us on the committee, where you might be or what you think about that. There's no proposal or anything like that. There's nothing before us. So we're just kind of talking about what that future might look like given all the uncertainties. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was on notice that that's being discussed, in the coming weeks.
Councilor Khan, you had your hand up again? No.
Nope, I don't think I never put it down. There we go.
Oh, okay. Councilor Tantar.
Yes, I would just like to thank everyone in the city who has been distancing themselves from everywhere else. I'd like to thank all the police department, all other city workers, fire department, firefighters, first responders. We've done a good job, we need to finish this off and keep doing it. It's a long way to go, probably. But I'm impressed, and let's keep doing as good a job as we can. Thank you.
Councillor Connell?
Yes, an addendum to Councillor Tantar's remarks, and that is, let's not forget the hospital workers, the doctors, the nurses, the orderlies, the food preparers, the janitors, everybody who keeps that place humming. If there's ever been a time when we needed their help and valued it, this was the time, and our hats off to them.
Okay, Councillor Z's comments reminded me, before the COVID-19 hit us, we had tried to sort of tighten up our practices on minutes. So if you have a committee, remember to get your minutes in. Don't forget, some of us are not great at it. I haven't been great at it in the past. Anyone else on good in the order? Yes, Councillor Tantar.
I just want to raise that. So we're recording all these meetings. Do you need minutes as well as a recorded record of the, recording of the meeting?
Yes, that did come up. Unfortunately, we do. The recordings are not the official record. The minutes for purposes of the open meeting law are still the written minutes.
Okay.
We don't have a rule on the recording, so the recordings are optional. I agree that they're, arguably better, but no, we still need written minutes.
Thank you.
How about a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Captain,